Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Dirks, and on behalf of ACRL and Choice, I'd like to welcome you to today's program, The Library's Role in Making Textbooks Affordable for Students, which is sponsored by Springer Nature. Today's discussion is one in a series of sponsored webinars from ACRL and Choice that addresses new ideas, developments, and products of interest to the academic library community. Free to users, these structured 60-minute live presentations provide the opportunity for interactive discussions of important new issues and developments in academic librarianship by librarians, vendors, authors, and other interested stakeholders. Before we get started, I'd like to point out a few features of the webinar software. In the main area of the screen, you should be able to follow along with the presentation materials. Along the right-hand side, you may see a chat panel and a Q&A panel. If you don't see the chat, you can look for the three buttons. For the button third in from the right on the bottom part of your screen there, that looks like a little dialogue box. And to open up the Q&A, you can click the three little dots next to that, and that will give you the options to open up the Q&A. Please do use the Q&A to send your questions in throughout the presentation for our presenters. At the end, we'll take some time to answer as many as we can get to in the allotted time. And if you're having any technical trouble with either your audio or your visual or anything like that, you can message me directly through the chat box, and we will troubleshoot that privately there. Today, we're using the hashtag ACRLChoiceWebinars during the event, so if you've got another screen handy, shout out to us. We're at choice_reviews on Twitter. Also note that we are recording today's program, and everyone that signed up should receive a follow-up email with a link to the recorded program. All right, and here to kick things off for us is Christy to introduce our speakers. So over to you, Christy.
Thanks, Mark, for the intro and the technical information, and welcome and thank you all for joining today's webinar on the library's role in making textbooks affordable. My name is Christy Gertzen, and I'm from the Springer Nature marketing team, and I'm here today to introduce our speakers, and I'll be running our Q&A session later on in the program. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you our two guest speakers today. Liz King, she's joining us. She's the Associate Director of Library Information Services at Rensselaer Polytech Institute in New York State. Liz oversees daily operations of the Technical Services Department. She is especially interested in the continued development of information literacy strategy at RPI. Liz is also an adjunct associate professor for business, government, and technical communications at a large community college. Bob Boise is the Director of Account Development Library Services at Springer Nature. Bob has spent the past 31 years in the library and publishing services. And Bob has served on many standards groups, including president of NASIC. And Bob and his current team at Springer Nature specialize in all library services from metadata discovery, account reviews, among very many other services provided to our library community. So without further ado, I will pass things over to our first speaker, Bob.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to have this opportunity to talk to you all today. It's a topic that is near and dear to my heart. Consider my first slide a kind of a subtitle. This is about the library's role in making textbooks affordable for students. I like to throw in the subtitle of affordable curriculum materials. Sometimes what's at stake is not exactly a textbook. So curriculum materials is kind of a little bit broader umbrella, so I use that term sometimes. I do obligated to tell you a few little things about us, mainly by way of reminding people that it was not that long ago that Springer and Nature and Macmillan and Palgrave all came together into the entity now known as Springer Nature. We are the world's largest academic book publisher. We are also very proud of to be a leading open access publisher, and that I will get to also includes ebooks. There's some nice comments about us and in terms of our scientific societies and our authors there. I want to remind people of what the brands that I'm talking about today. I'm just kind of setting the stage here for what Liz will talk about later in terms of, more libraries, role. This is setting the stage in terms of what kinds of content are out there. These are our imprints. I think most people are familiar with these. I'll move on and remind people that we're talking about two platforms. And today's talk is about mainly about ebooks as curriculum materials. Those are all located on our Springer Link platform. We also, of course, run the nature.com platform. There's a quick little reminder there that we're starting to put videos on the Springer Link platform. But let's move on to the discussion of today's topic. This gives you a sense of the scope of what we publish on the ebook side. You can see that the majority of our ebooks are in what's commonly called STEM fields. But through the merger, we now have quite a portfolio of social science and humanities content as well. And then you can see some of our other publishers that you're familiar with and the kinds of size of their portfolio. This slide I need to take a little time on because I want everybody to know that there is a white paper about to come out. It is a white paper with principal author is Michael Levine Clark, who is the Dean of Libraries at the University of Denver. Michael has worked with me now for well over a year on a kind of a data-centric, data-heavy project to look at all of our contemporary ebooks. We added in our mathematics books archive as well to that to get a total contemporary set of books of over 97,583 English language books is the basis of our project. Within that portfolio that we took for our sample, over 4,300 graduate and advanced undergraduate textbooks, or 4.4%, and then 1.4% is what we categorize as undergraduate textbooks. So that's the set of books that we're using to do our study. We decided to study all ebook use in the United States and Canada from 2013 to 2018. The downloads from those books were over 915 million chapter downloads during that period. 93 million of those came from graduate and advanced undergraduate textbooks, and 28, almost 29 million downloads from undergraduate textbooks. So the point of this particular slide is to give you some sense of the size of our portfolio, and also that the textbooks, while being only 5.9% of our portfolio studied, accounted for over almost 13.5% of the overall use. So they are getting a disproportionate amount of use, and we're very proud of that. We think that that kind of use means students are saving a lot of money on textbooks, which is a happy thing for us. We are acutely aware that textbooks can be expensive. Liz may mention an op-ed piece she saw yesterday in the New York Times, but here's some other kind of write-ups from around the world, U.S. News and World Report, Inside Higher Ed, and so forth. We can see clearly that textbook costs are an issue, have been an issue, and are continuing to be an issue for students. This is a little data about textbook affordability. The folks at Spark and elsewhere are clear that students are spending over $1,200 a year on books and supplies. The National Association of College Stores tells us that 83% of students purchased a textbook from their stores during the year, and then that there's a little bit of delay as people buy their first textbooks a week into the course. Probably looking hard at the price tag on the textbook for the course they've chosen, maybe changing a course even. This is an important study that was done at Florida. You should be, I think we'll be distributing these slides to you after. You can look at this study more carefully if you'd like, but it was a study done in 2016 in the state of Florida and showed clearly that that textbook costs were really having a negative effect on student learning. Fewer courses, some students dropped or withdrew from courses, got a bad grade because they couldn't buy the textbook, and many of them just flat out didn't purchase the book. So you've got textbooks themselves as a mode of teaching is starting to negatively impact the results for the students. And I think from what I hear from the librarians I talk to, the assessment of student outcomes is quickly becoming more directly tied to the library's efforts. And so I think this topic remains and will remain relevant to libraries. Next is a little bit of positive news. There is recognition of the problem, and students are clever, and they're finding ways around the edges to make ends meet. And professors are starting to also get the message, many with the help of librarians giving them the message. Some aspects of student textbook affordability, the average student spend did decrease, according to the National Association of College Stores, about 16% in recent years. And 18% of students reported downloading textbooks for no cost. So that's a good number, but could get better. 77% still buy course materials from the bookstore. 42% buy their materials from Amazon. And I don't think those numbers are mutually exclusive. I think they're going where they need to go to get things done. I also wanted to say that we are aware, very aware, and out looking as a commercial publisher. We want to know the full scope of the educational resources available to students, and the initiatives, the Open Education Resources Initiative, very interesting to us. We feel that we want to complement these initiatives, not try to somehow push them out or push them away. Instead, we want to embrace them. We see these kinds of initiatives with OER and faculty-created textbooks as being particularly important for the first year or two of students, where they tend to spend the most money on expensive textbooks. We feel that these solutions, these alternatives, are things that are hold out a lot of hope for those first 2 years of school, of college. Down at the bottom, though, we have other things going on, and one of those things is things like Springer Link textbooks. Textbooks that the library can license. They're available online. Therefore, when a student uses them, they cost the student nothing. That does mean that faculty have to be interested in using those kind of textbooks. And I think Liz may speak to it more about whether, what role librarians should take, and we can discuss that in the chat and the Q&A. Proper role for libraries in recommending or suggesting or just kind of raising the visibility of licensed content for curriculum use. Okay. I do want to remind folks that, as with all Springer ebooks, our textbooks do not have digital rights management on them. That means a student can download the book, keep it on their device of choice for as long as they wish to keep it, indefinitely. Unlimited concurrent access, so everybody in the class can download the textbook and use it. Can be used offline, of course. Doesn't need to be connected to Wi-Fi or internet once you've downloaded it for the first time. And the licensed rights are permanent to the library, so that textbook is never going to kind of be there and then not be there. These are all the kind of dictates or mandates or suggestions, if you want to put it nicely, of the Charlotte Initiative, which we very much embrace that, these three different areas. Excuse me. There is, of course, on our platform, there's no limits on things like printing or copying or cutting and pasting. All of our ebooks come with the rights for interlibrary loan and walk-in use and all those kinds of things. So those are just reminders about why they become particularly pliable with textbooks and with classes and for curriculum use. Next is just a reminder that we will often hear students say, well, it's great to have the free ebook. That's fine. I can look things up. I can do a Control F to look for my specific content. But still, I would like to have a print copy of that textbook. Well, with our licensed books, you do have that. A student can click on the button that says My Copy and order a $24.99 copy of their textbook. These books in hardcover are still fairly expensive at retail costs, so being able to order a paperback copy of the textbook for $24.99 is basically the cost of the book if you were to photocopy it would probably cost more than that. So that is having your cake and eat it too, and we're very proud of that. And coming towards the end of my slides, I wanted to show you that Springer Nature has a ongoing and very important to us ebook publishing program that is open access. We've been publishing more open access books every year. This is the amount of books per year, not the, obviously not, it's not going up and down. That's the amount we have put out so far this year, 214 new OA ebooks. So our program is on the go, and we're very proud of these. We do have a few textbooks in this grouping, by the way. Here is a list of our top open access ebooks. This is obviously the ultimate in affordability because our open access ebooks actually, to do the licensed ebooks one better, these are completely open access to the library as well as to the student. And we have some very nice titles here. You can take a quick look and see some of these these are our top ones in engineering and various fields. I'll move on. Just a quick reminder about what a Springer Nature textbook is. As I said before, we do not specialize in the 101, freshman style textbooks. The first biology course, the first physics course, first chemistry course. That's not really where we publish. We do have some mathematics texts that are at that level, but most of our textbooks are going to be in that second, third, and fourth year in the smaller seminar courses and things like that. They certainly are textbooks in the sense that they are designed to be used in a course. They map to a course. They were created from a course. They are by an author. They're not edited by a group of some sort. And they're modular in the sense that they would, you would teach them in a modular way as a class. So all of them follow that formula. You see one of the textbooks there on the left, Understanding Analysis, is by Stephen Abbott. It's a very popular textbook for those doing real analysis and really getting into mathematics as their major. Top 15 textbooks of 2018. I want to put an underline under the Modeling Life that Professor Garfinkel is featured on our webpage, which I will give you the URL for our textbooks. He has found a way to teach pre-med students and medical students how the mathematics that they need and teach that in a way that relates directly to biology and life. So this is a fantastic new kind of concept, and especially we're especially good at multidisciplinary things like this. But that is one that you will be able to take a look at and read the professor's commentary about that particular textbook on this URL page, springernature.com/affordable textbooks. So if you can remember that, you've got a pathway into our textbooks, and you can follow up with that. I did want to say that our original campaign, where we kind of became aware of the acute nature of students' problems around before June 2015, but we really got to it in a marketing sense around that time, where we started sending clients lists of the textbooks that they had already licensed, that weren't sure that they really knew that they had licensed them, or that there were textbooks in the Springer Nature portfolio. Excuse me. The goal of our program is to build awareness, and we wanted to remind people that textbooks can be quite important curriculum materials, even in the upper level classes, and they're meant to teach niche courses, but very important nonetheless. Yes, again, I want to point you to the Affordable Textbooks page, because you can read more about our textbooks, and there's a librarian interview and an author interview there that makes for interesting reading, I think. I'll move on. This is my last slide. There's another URL, longer one, for the same Affordable Textbook page, but one of the things you can do on the Affordable Textbooks page is request a Springer Nature textbook list, or if you already have a lot of Springer Nature licensed books, or any Springer Nature licensed books, we can send you a textbook list of just those textbooks that you already have licensed. It's easy enough for us to send you that list, and you can just ask for that, just put your email, your institution, and click on the button if you want to know about just the textbooks that you've already licensed. We'll send you that list, maybe make your day a little easier. Okay, that is the end of my formal presentation, so I will yield the floor over to Liz.
Hi, thank you, Bob. This is Liz. Thanks everybody for attending, and I wanted to thank Bob. That sets a really great stage for what I want to share with you. So my name is Liz King, and I'm looking forward to sharing my experiences with you about working with students and faculty to provide access to affordable textbooks and ebooks using available library resources. But before I do that, I want to tell you a little bit about my background in libraries. So my current position is at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, also known as RPI, and I'm currently the Associate Director for Library Information Services. And specifically, I oversee the daily operations for the Tech Services Department. So I've been here for just under a year. And prior to this role, I spent many years as an instruction and outreach librarian at a large emerging research university. And so instruction and outreach has been a focus of mine for really the last 10 to 12 years. I've been responsible for collection development at numerous institutions and for multiple disciplines. So most of you are probably familiar with the process of collection development, but I want to provide a quick definition for anybody who isn't. So for librarians, collection development is the process of selecting materials using available and often flat or shrinking library funds. Most of you know what I'm talking about if you're responsible for collection development. So librarians and also other selectors in the library, we have to take into account the needs of the library users when we select these materials. And I know how challenging it can be to connect faculty and students to library resources when we as librarians generally have little or no say in the textbook selection process. And one way that I know that is I've been teaching distance learning courses at Austin Community College since 2014. And in that role, I am responsible for selecting textbooks. So I've personally witnessed how the high cost of textbooks prevent some students from purchasing the materials they need. And I noticed that in Bob's slide, he talks about in the early part of the semester, sometimes students wait a week or more to purchase their textbooks. And I've asked students why they do this, and they say that they want to make sure that they're actually going to need the textbook before buying them, because oftentimes they'll spend, $175 or more plus the code to get into the online site that they need, and then they don't need the book, and they don't realize it until towards the end of the semester, then they can't return them. So by the time they realize that they do need the book and they buy it, if they buy it, they've already become behind in reading and assignments. And I noticed especially at Austin Community College, I noticed how much more quickly the classes would fill up with students when the textbook was made available either through OER or as an ebook in the library. So lastly, with my experience in libraries, I've been an outreach librarian in the past, and I have outreach responsibilities in my current position. And if we want faculty to consider library resources when they build their curriculum, we need to work with faculty since those are the resources that the students are going to be using. So an important, I think I skipped something here. Hold on one second. Okay, an important part of outreach is knowing your audience. So I want to tell you a little bit about RPI, just a little. I joined RPI in my current role in January of this year. And my first course of action was to learn who and what I was working with. And so I looked up our motto and our mission statement. And our motto is, why not change the world? And you can see the mission statement there on this slide. So this gives you a sense about RPI's focus on the importance of technology and global issues. And when you're starting to think about how to connect your library's ebooks and textbooks to the current curriculum, which is the key, a good place to start is to look for something like this, like quick facts about your institution. This is an example about RPI's quick facts. I found this quickly through an online search, and this gave me a bird's eye view when I first came on board here about what type of connections can be made between the library's resources and the institution. So just a quick overview here. We have around 8,000 resident students, 500 full-time faculty. Our student experience is a bit unique in that they use something called the class philosophy, which means clustered time-based learning. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And our students attend a full academic summer semester known as the Arch when they're rising juniors. And then that allows them to participate in a semester away to gain real-world experience in their field. And then one other quick fact that I saw when I was coming on board here is that we have 6 main schools, but they all have a technology-focused foundation. And I learned about that through a committee that I'll talk about in a moment. And what this means is that even if the students are here for humanities, arts, or business, they're taking technology courses since they're at RPI. So how does the library fit into this larger picture that I'm painting? We have a very small staff. We have under 20 full-time staff members. We have 32 student workers. We have 2 locations here in Troy, and we have 2 campuses that our 2 Troy locations serve. And so access to ebooks is very important because one of our locations is in Hartford, Connecticut. And so the students in Hartford are using the libraries in Troy to access ebooks and textbooks online. And our main users are students and faculty, but we also serve visiting and outside researchers. So here's where we start to connect some of these dots. When we think about these areas of librarianship that I've just mentioned, we've got collection development, outreach, budget, staffing constraints, and then as Bob started to talk about the rising cost of textbooks, and then as an associate director and a librarian here, I have to think about institute-wide priorities. So how do we connect all those dots? And how do we connect our available textbooks and ebooks in the library to our student and faculty needs? Easy, right? No, it's not. So I'm a firm believer that you have to work with faculty first if you want to get library resources into students' hands. Students have so much required reading here, and I know at your institution too, that it's very rare for a student to be looking for a textbook or an ebook on top of their required reading, the reading that's listed in their syllabus, especially for undergraduates. So with that in mind, here and at other places that I've been, we're working very hard to make inroads with faculty in order to get our library resources known to them and then into their students' hands. And so here on this slide, you'll see a list of some of the ways that we're working on these initiatives. We solicited an invitation. I'll put that, we asked to sit on the curriculum committee here at RPI, and there weren't librarians on that committee or anybody from the library staff. And so now there's 2 of us on that committee. And what that means is by sitting on that committee, we have cross-communication about faculty topics, but also we're there as an advocate for library resources. And there have been numerous instances on this curriculum committee where I've learned about a high priority or a new initiative on the faculty's radar that I might not have known about otherwise, and I certainly wouldn't have known about it in a timely fashion if I hadn't been on that committee. So by learning about the faculty initiatives early, we at the library can make informed decisions when we're selecting ebooks and textbooks and packages and databases and different materials. We also have I know a lot of other institutions have this also. We have a faculty librarian liaison program. And for anyone not familiar with that, that means that here individual librarians are assigned to schools and to academic departments, which the essence of that is it enables a clear communication line between a specific faculty member and a specific library staff. So if a faculty member wants to reach out about materials selections or another topic, they know through that liaison program who to contact. And what that also allows us to do is the library hosts regular faculty librarian liaison meetings, and we have them as luncheons. And if you've ever invited faculty to come into the library, if you host a luncheon, it's a really good way to have more of an informal sit down with your liaison, and it's also incentive to come to the meeting. So when they come to these meetings, this is an opportunity where we can ask faculty about what type of textbooks they're using or what kinds of ebooks they're using, and also what kind of ebooks would be relevant to their students outside of the assigned or the core book in their course. And sometimes we've found that faculty weren't even aware of the resources that we had available in the library. And they might have been looking for more affordable materials for their students, and we can help walk them through what resources we have for them to make their selections. And then lastly on this slide, so as an information literacy advocate, and it's one of my big passions, I don't think you can talk about faculty and students using libraries and not discuss information literacy. So we are always looking for ways to build and maintain partnerships with our faculty, and one way is to develop personalized classes or information literacy modules for those faculty members. And what happens when the librarian or the library staff gets that ball in their court of creating information literacy materials for a faculty member, we have more control over what resources we put into that resource for the faculty member and for their students. So we can link through LibGuides or through an LMS or through other methods to get a direct connection to the students looking for resources in those classes. And so that leads me to the students, which I would put first, but as I said before, you have to get to the faculty and through the faculty to get to the students as a librarian. So these are some of the things that we're doing when we work with the students on campus here. I mentioned briefly earlier this thing called the class philosophy. So you can see there on the slide, this stands for clustered learning, advocacy, and support for students. And what this means is it's a comprehensive student experience here at RPI, and it's based on time and location-based clustering of small student groups. And it offers students a unique growth experience within their small groups. And what that means for us is that our students have a decreased reliance on textbooks versus where I've seen at other institutions, they look more for their textbooks, for their classes. Here, with these class cluster-based learning, they're looking for ebooks to support the projects that they're working on in these class clusters. And so since their experiences are more experiential team-based learning here, they're looking more for ebooks online than they're looking for textbooks online. But that's still very relevant to what offerings the library can have. So one of the first steps is we have to increase the visibility of library resources. So what we do is we strive to make our ebook collections visible on our website, which we have control over, through links and then also instructions for access. And what I mean by instructions for access is with all of the different ebook vendors and different policies that come with the different vendors, there's a lot of times kind of a difficult book of rules to navigate when it comes to content, number of consecutive users that you can have, timeouts, printing, downloading, if you want to check the book out. If you want to open it up, you might have to have different software for different vendors, and then also whether or not they need to create a user account to read a book. And so in my years of providing reference services, one of the most common questions from students is that they're trying to access an ebook and they're having difficulty accessing it. And their question is, for us, the librarian, it helps us even to have that on our website, a table of all the different vendors and ebook policies that differ across the platforms. So the reality here is that with our library staff, and I think this is true with most library staff, we can't be here all the time when a student has a question. And so I've noticed even if we are here when the students have questions, they don't necessarily approach an available staff member, and they'll try to find the answer for themselves looking on their laptop. So one thing that we've done is we've very recently implemented a 24/7 Ask Us chat with the librarian service that we put a widget on our main page. And we were able to, speaking of flat funding, we were able to get this resource for free using our membership with our consortium, Capital District Library Council. And the reason I mention this is, if something like an Ask Us 24/7 chat would help you connect your students to your ebook packages, it may be worth looking into membership perks that you might have through consortiums. So far it's free to us because it's subsidized by them, and we just have to staff the chat part of the time to get 24/7 access in return. And so what I've noticed with reviewing these transcripts is, if a student will come in and chat at 3 a.m. on a Sunday looking for a resource, right, for their paper that's due the Monday morning following, and we wouldn't have been able to help them find that ebook or textbook until we got back the next day. So in this quest for affordable textbooks and ebooks, we can't do everything, but we can do something, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. So I found this quote online by Arthur Ashe, and I found this to be both inspirational but also very relevant for how I feel about this quest for affordable textbooks. So start where you are and use what you have and do what you can. And I feel like that baby step approach makes it a little bit more manageable to assessing where you are now. And even if you're not where you'd like your institution to be, I feel like you can take these little steps towards getting there. So that's my material for now, and I'm really interested in hearing about people's thoughts and questions and also about their own experiences with this topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Liz, for your presentations. Just to remind anyone who's still on the call, if you have questions for Bob or Liz, please use the chat box in the right-hand side of your WebEx window to pose questions. Okay, we have one question here. Maybe, Bob, you might want to touch on this one. I'll read the question out for those of you that might not be on the screen, but behind your, just on the telephone. The first question is, do you have to have an account for students to get the $24.99 price with My Copy ebooks?
Yeah, that My Copy button will show up on any book that the library has licensed for the campus. There are some small exceptions. Our reference works, big reference works don't have a My Copy availability, but most of our normal books, including the textbooks, have a My Copy button. So that will appear by virtue of the library having purchased the books in question. And so it really depends. If you were to go onto Springer Link as a member of the public without an affiliation, you would not see the My Copy button. So hopefully that answers that question. Yes, it is a perk that the library gets for the campus by virtue of its work in licensing our ebooks.
Great, thanks, Bob. We have a question here for Liz. How supportive has your administration been? Have they provided extra funding for textbooks? Textbook affordability, sorry.
Yes, I was just reading through these questions. Now, these are all really good questions. So that's a difficult question to answer. I haven't felt a lack of support. That said, we have not received extra funding for textbook affordability. We've really had to work with the funds that we have and make cuts, but also not make cuts if there's areas where we can see that the cost per use of the book justifies keeping the package usually. But we also are in the very, and I'm looking at the next question about the encouraging the use of OERs. We're in the very early stages of talking with the faculty through that librarian faculty liaison group about what their opinions are about the use of OERs and affordable textbooks. And we're not, this isn't being led by the institution. This is more being discussed at sort of a grassroots level between the library and the faculty, but we haven't had a very formal conversation yet about it. And so we're just starting to hear maybe even whispers of interest, and we're wanting to host more luncheons to talk about that at that low level.
Great, thanks, Liz. One more question for you. Actually, not was a few more, but kind of shifting gears a little bit. Have any faculty who authored their own textbooks been resistant to your efforts?
I have not encountered that. If that is the case, it hasn't been brought to my attention.
Another question for you, Liz. Does RPI use a third-party bookstore? Hold on one second. There's questions flooding in it that the chat's just moving on me. Does RPI use, wait, sorry, my chat's moving around here. Hold, bear with me one second. Here we go. Goodness, I'm sorry. There's questions are flooding in the chat box.
I'm looking at them myself.
And the chat, it's great. Thank you all for all your questions. But when they come in, it slides the chat for me, so I'm losing the view. I'm trying to scroll down here. I don't know if we're having. Okay, here we are. Does RPI use a third-party bookstore for textbooks? And if so, have there been challenges for the library that you've overcome?
So the library hasn't had any conversations with the bookstore, and it's funny how when you hear a question and then you think you know the answer, you're like, I think I know that answer, but now I am trying to look it up. I don't believe it is a third-party bookstore, and if I'm wrong, I apologize. But we have almost no interaction with the bookstore, so that's not something that's come up in terms of any challenges. It's really just in terms of my knowledge is the faculty selects their materials, and we normally don't have any say in that at all. And so we're trying to work more from like a supplemental material point of view at this point. Okay. And I see the question about staffing the chat overnight.
Yes, I was just going to read that out. So there was a question of who staffs the chats overnight at RPI.
So that's my favorite part of this consortium, this Ask Us 24/7. We are logged in the afternoon here in Troy, New York, and we are answering questions usually from overseas. And then when it's a global consortium, and when we review the transcripts of our RPI students' chats, they are being answered by librarians overseas. And so it's really you staff the chat during your own operating hours, and then globally the chats are answered by other librarians that are logged in during the students' question time.
Great, thanks. Question for Bob. Do the e-textbooks include teaching package such as exercise quizzes, PowerPoints, supplemental materials?
Yeah.
The reason,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
The reason that most faculty use commercial textbook publisher is that they include those packages.
Yeah, I will have to admit that it varies by textbook. There are some that have separate documents that are questions and answers and teachers' manuals. Certainly, a lot of our textbooks, do have those extra pieces, and so the answer is kind of qualified. Some of the books I've noticed have used chapter by chapter method and have certain kinds of discussion questions and other curriculum material right at the end of the chapter. But it is, I would say that if you're talking about the extra website, with where students can do their homework and a very interactive website that's associated with a textbook. No, we haven't really gone that direction. That would add significant cost, and so that's not what we do. As I said, we really don't do at this point in our publishing program. We really don't do the freshman level, 100 level courses where most of those kinds of textbooks predominate. They're the 300-page, 400-page, $250 textbooks. We don't really do that in our program.
Great, thanks, Bob. And actually, there's another question for you, Bob, on the lines of textbooks. Do you anticipate expanding online textbooks to include support for entry-level courses?
That's a really good question. We have a different division of our company, Macmillan, that basically really has that space, and I don't think you'll see Springer Verlag, part of the company that I've been speaking about today, the Springer Nature part of the company. I don't think you will see us go into that area, which is. It does not mean that we might not occasionally post a textbook, especially likely in mathematics and some aspects of economics, so micro and macroeconomics and calculus, geometry, and some other textbooks could certainly be used at either a freshman or a sophomore level. But I want to be honest that the majority of our textbooks are, the kind of textbooks you would take maybe starting at a 300 level undergraduate and right on up through graduate studies where curriculum materials are needed. That is, for now, the focus of the Springer Nature side. Again, there is the other side of a company under the same umbrella that is the Macmillan side. A different
Great.
Group, and not a group that is represented, for example, on Springer Link.
Great, thanks, Bob, for clarity on that. Question for you, Liz. One of your slides mentioned interlibrary loan in connection with ebooks. Could you perhaps speak to how that works?
I don't recall having a slide that mentioned interlibrary loan.
That might have been my slide.
Is that Bob?
That was yours, Bob. Sorry.
Yeah. I can say a word if Liz has an idea she wants to throw in. But I can say that on our licenses, we certainly do have clauses that talk to interlibrary loan. And while the loan of articles is perhaps more common, the loan of individual chapters of books is certainly permitted. We have dabbled in, but have kind of not continued in the idea about loan of entire ebooks. Right now, we basically say treat chapters of ebooks like you would articles, and follow basic Cantu guidelines, uh, assuring that the borrowing of chapters does not take the place of actually buying a book. That's the basic rule, and otherwise follow the kind of rule of 5 and the known interlibrary loan rules for journal articles as it's for book chapters. Hope that answers that.
Great. Bob, we have a question about Springer Nature videos. Will these be independent of the journals and books or tied to them?
Oh, wow, that's really interesting. The quick answer is that they are basically independent in the sense that they will for the most part, they're brand new. So, we may be futzing around with the business models a little bit, but those videos will be purchasable, kind of just by themselves. I imagine that we, although I'm not in licensing and I'm not allowed to quote anybody, I imagine that their consideration will be given to some combination of products, but they are not. If, for example, the video being directly tied and only available if you bought a book, they are at this point not addendums to books or addendums to journals. They are freestanding.
Great, thanks, Bob. And just to add Bob's comment about Springer Nature videos later or actually coming in 2020, Springer Nature, we will be having a webinar on a case study of videos in learning. So keep an eye out for that. Most likely it will be in medicine or computer science subject areas. I can add to that. Just looking here, actually we have more questions that came in, and we still have more time, and we still have people on the line, so I'll keep sending them your way. Liz, are there certain classes that you are targeted for affordable textbooks? We are starting to think about this, and we'll probably focus on classes with high withdrawal, fail, drop rates, and largest enrollments.
So we're not targeting specific classes for affordable textbooks. It's not a very large initiative right now that the library has. It's more of a personalized interest for some of us. And so the way that I am targeting, I'm more working with faculty that I have a relationship with. And as you know, it can take a little while to form relationships with different faculty members. And so I'm just approaching a year here, and I've made some connections with about 2 or 3 faculty members, usually through their interest in information literacy sessions. And what that allows me to do is to talk to the professor about what resources I would share with their students. And that normally sort of organically enters into a conversation about textbooks and mostly ebooks, as I said, not so much textbooks with our students, but academic ebooks that the students could have access to. And when I talk about being able to share those with their students, a lot of times that's when I realized that the faculty didn't know that those were available through the library, and then that can start that next conversation about affordable textbooks for their students when they're doing their selection for the next semester.
Great, thanks, Liz. It looks like we might have actually run through the questions that have been submitted. If there's any additional questions that you want to ask in the next couple of minutes,
I do. This is
so.
Liz.
Okay.
I do see one question. I don't know if it came to just me.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Somebody asked about how often and how well attended are the faculty luncheons, and do we hold them by discipline? So we hold them once a semester. Once a long semester, so twice a year. We may think about the summer now that we have this Summer Arch Away program at RPI, but we at least have 2 a year. They're not by discipline, they're for all disciplines, and they're attended by 1 faculty from each school or department. That's a liaison to the, so So we hope that they bring what they get from that luncheon to their department. And some of them write up minutes and share it with their department, or I'm not sure how the other ones share it. But they are very well attended, and I, I joke, but it's true. I think that the fact that it's a luncheon helps with the attendance, but then it is a very genuinely good conversation that happens over the lunch. I don't know if they would be as well attended if they were not over lunch. And I'm sure everybody's had that experience.
We actually have another question for you, Liz. Have you encountered resistance from faculty? Oh boy, here we go. We jumped.
I see it.
There's more. Can you say it?
Yeah, so the question is, have you encountered resistance from faculty who think their textbook selections might be dictated or strongly influenced, and how do you handle that if so? I have not encountered resistance, but I know what resistance you speak of. And I know that from my role as an associate professor at the community college. Anytime there's a discussion of possibly dictating textbook selections, faculty will and do get up in arms, myself included, from that standpoint. And so it can't come across as a mandate, and that's where the supplemental materials, I think, are the way to approach that. Personally, I think that the demand for affordable textbooks will come and will have to come from students. But as a professor, I also see that students don't do as well in my class when they don't purchase the textbook. And if you're forced to select the most current edition, the cost can go from $20 used to, $220 new. And so I think that faculty are going to have to think about, and that's, Bob had alluded to it really quickly, but there was an op-ed earlier yesterday in the New York Times that I think is a really good conversation starter for how faculty think about their students' expenses with textbooks.
Liz, another question actually related to this. You mentioned that classes fill up faster when affordable textbooks, ebooks are available through the library. How do you let students know that the books are available for free or low cost?
Okay, so I can speak to this from teaching at Austin Community College. I teach a section that has maybe 15 sections, and so there's about, there's a handful of us who teach that same section. And the way that the students know is when they go to select their class and look to see the available times, there's a link that they can click to see what the textbook is. And if the link goes to the bookstore, that class will fill up last for the same class, a different section. If the link goes to the online, freely available, or to the library ebook version, those classes will fill up first. So if you're in an adjunct position, as I am, and you want to keep your sections that you get assigned, it does make you think about what textbook you're using if you want your classes to have enough students to stick.
Great, thanks, Liz. We have one more question actually related to your luncheons. Do you create presentations for the luncheons, or do you let them evolve as like a free format?
So the only presentation that we prescribe for the luncheon is sort of a state of the library and a state of the materials funds. We like to keep the faculty informed about when we make decisions here in the library that may not be popular decisions. We want them to know that that decision was based on funding, and let them know a little bit behind our reasoning and also some of the constraints that we're faced with. In terms of letting them evolve, we have found that just having one or two questions as a conversation starter is a wonderful way to get a sense of where the faculty thinks about certain topics. So for instance, if we want to know where they feel about affordable textbooks, that's exactly what we would do. We would just ask them and then let that conversation evolve rather than anticipate or hope for the conversation to go in a certain direction and plan a presentation which never goes the way you want it to.
Excellent. This is Mark jumping in here. I would just say thank you so much, Liz, for fielding all of these questions, and thank you, Bob, for the questions and the presentation and Christy, thank you for moderating this Q&A so ably. I would just take a moment here to remind everybody on the line that we did record today's program. So be on the lookout sometime tomorrow for a link to that. It should come to you in your email. And please take a moment, and you should see in the chat box that came through to you a link to a survey. Please take a moment to fill that out here before you jump off the line and let us know how we did. We really appreciate your feedback, and getting as much of it as possible helps us to make these programs better. So I would just say thank you to everyone out there for listening in today. I hope you enjoyed the session, and I hope the rest of your day is great. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.